Hello everybody, today I'm just going to be giving you some tips for making your Druid leveling experience a little bit better. So the first thing I'm going to say is Codex of Power. Make sure you are making a build out of this. You can get things like Aspect of the Shepherd that'll help buff up your core skills, etc, and whatnot. You can also get cool defensive things like Aspect of Might, Aspect of Mending Stone. These will increase the duration of your Earthen Bulwark, and it'll also make it to where you get more damage reduction when you use your basic skills, and it'll really help you out when it comes to leveling. You can also get a really cool one like Aspect of the Changeling's Det, where when you use a Werebear skill, it'll detonate all the poison you have on somebody, causing it to do a lot of damage. So make sure you are utilizing this. You get this at level 25, or when you unlock an aspect. You unlock an aspect by completing a normal dungeon. Press Y and you can see everything that you have unlocked. So alrighty, that's going to be it for the first tip. The second tip is going to be making sure that you're upgrading gems and using the jeweler crafter if you can. Now it's going to be a little bit hard to add sockets, but if you do have sockets, just throw low level gems on there. They do have pretty cool stuff like 6% damage over taking damage over time reduction and stuff like that. And obviously you'll be using a little bit of a lesser one, but that's okay. Then you have things like the blacksmith. So at the blacksmith you can actually upgrade your weapon, and it actually makes a pretty big difference. So you can upgrade it 4 times, and I know at least for me it's like a 50 damage upgrade. So make sure you're upgrading your weapon to make sure it's doing the most damage possible. Make sure you stop at 4. You do not need to go all the way to 5 because you're probably not going to have the Forgotten Souls to upgrade it that far anyway, and you really don't want to waste that much mats on it. But upgrading your gear a little bit, at least up to 3 or 4, is going to help you out, and it's going to give you more armor, etc. And it is also going to increase the secondary stats that you gain from your gear. So that's kind of important as well. If you are if you start to get to a higher level, get World Tier 3 and stuff unlocked, thinking about secondaries and stuff like this is going to be important. And even if you are lower level, if you find gear that says things like this, damage reduction from enemies that are poisoned, damage reduction from distant enemies and stuff like that, make sure you stack those damage reduction ones on there if you can. I think they're only going to be like 4% at low level, but still, it'll all add up and it'll help you out a ton in terms of your survivability and stuff like that. Okay, the next thing I would say when it comes to the Druid is to make sure you are doing a build that is at least somewhat cohesive, and you're using abilities that are strong at a baseline level and don't need a whole lot of legendaries to really pop off. So Storm Strike is a really good generator. It gives you 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds. So this one is going to be probably the best one you can use base before you start getting legendaries and stuff like that, because it's also going to give you access to the immobilize effect and the vulnerable effect, so it's even going to increase the damage that you deal when you use this. When it comes to core skills, I wouldn't recommend using Tornado because you need the Windseeker's aspect, and I do believe that is a dropped legendary, so it's going to make it to where this is just going to kind of go around randomly instead of seeking targets. Lightning Storm is also a little bit difficult to use because it's going to make you run out of spirit really fast. So until you have things like a dropped legendary like Aspect of the Mighty Storm, so you can use Earthen Might with it, it's going to be a little bit difficult to use. Shred, Pulverize, and Landslide, however, are all really good base and do a pretty good damage even without legendaries, so I'd highly recommend you use one of those 3. Also pay attention to your passives, so you can get more core skill damage here, you can get more defense here, etc. And then when you come down to the defensive ones, don't be afraid to use multiple defensive ones. I know it's not like somewhere you got to pick one out of each. You can pick multiple. I used Earthen Bulwark and Bloodhowl for a lot of my leveling experience, so make sure, don't be afraid to stack up on defensives if you need it, because it doesn't matter if you have a bunch of damage if you're just dead. Also, do not sleep on companions. Companions early on are really good when it comes to leveling. If you get lucky and get a drop with Aspect of the Alpha, your wolves are going to absolutely destroy, and even if you don't get that drop, your wolves still give you a ton of fortify and defense, as well as the Poison Creeper will probably just one-shot most things, even early on. Like, Poison Creeper is crazy, so don't sleep on the companion abilities early on. They do fall off later, but that's not until you'd have to be like max level in order for that to really be happening. So definitely don't sleep on those. I would avoid abilities like Rabies, like Boulder. Honestly, maybe even Hurricane. They just have such a long cooldown at this level, to where I don't think they're going to be like of crazy use. If you were going to use any of them, I would say use Trample or Hurricane, one of those two, because at least you get something out of it. But Rabies and Boulder, I think overall are kind of not that great, so I wouldn't use them. When it comes to your ultimate, I don't even know if I would recommend using an ultimate ability while leveling. I don't think they're really all that great. Lacerate can get you out of a sticky situation if you're CC'd. Grizzly Rage is okay, but it doesn't really become super good until you have the legendaries for it, which are dropped, so I'm not sure I would recommend that. I'd probably stay away from these unless maybe you're doing a landslide build. Then Petrify becomes pretty good because landslide has guaranteed crits built into it and is a really good base ability, and this will help amplify that. However, I would make sure that you are utilizing these passives for like nature skills and for your core skills. They will help you out a ton. And then when it comes to the keystone passives, I think Lupine Ferocity is pretty good while leveling. I think Ursine's Strength is pretty good while leveling. Earthern Might isn't too bad either. It's also pretty good while leveling because you don't really need a legendary for this to pop off as long as you're going landslide. But I'd probably stay away from the other ones because they're going to require you to have more of a build together. And yeah, so I really would not recommend that. After that, the last thing I could say is this. Make sure your weapon damage is always as high as possible. This is the number one thing your damage scales off of, and if this is low, you are going to have a bad time. So please make sure that you always keep this maxed out, and do not, even if, so see this, it says Shred seeks out nearby poisoned enemies. Even if I was to lose this legendary, right, if it was to get a weapon that was like 10 levels higher while leveling, it's probably worth it, unfortunately, right? So, well, actually, I guess that brings me into this will actually be the last tip. Never imprint your best dropped legendary onto your weapon. Only imprint codex powers onto your weapon. Put your best dropped legendary onto your amulet because your rings and stuff aren't going to play as big of an impact on your damage as what your weapon is. You're going to be swapping your weapon all the time. So you're going to end up losing your legendary powers very quickly while leveling if you put them onto your weapon. And this is specifically for dropped ones. If you have a Codex of Power where you can just re-go to the Occultist and put it back on, that's fine. But I would highly not recommend putting a dropped legendary. Like, for example, this one I have on there is dropped. If I was leveling and I wanted to use this, I would most likely put this on my amulet instead, just to make sure I can continue to use it if it's a core thing that my build is going to revolve around while I am leveling. Alrighty, well, that is going to do it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.